"What the hell are you doing in my formation, Hall?" The words cut across the humid morning air like a whip. Every boot on the gravel seemed to pause. Every head turned. Private Marcus Hall froze, his pack slung awkwardly across his shoulders. Sergeant Miller stood just feet away, jaw tight, voice booming for all to hear. "Maintenance stock belongs in the motor pool, not here with soldiers." The other recruits snickered. Some laughed out loud, and Marcus felt the heat climb up his neck. In that moment, the barracks yard became a stage, and he was the fool everyone was watching. The army didn't care where you came from. At least that's what Marcus believed when he signed the papers. But here, standing at attention under a cloudless sky, he was treated like he didn't belong. Miller had already decided Marcus was nothing but dead weight. Too slow, too clumsy, too ordinary. Marcus swallowed hard and stared straight ahead. He knew better than to answer back. In the military, silence sometimes was the only armor you had. Later that night, in the barracks, the humiliation continued. Boots were lined up perfectly under every bunk except his. Miller stormed in during inspection, stopping at Marcus's cot. He tapped the worn-out leather with his baton. "What's this? Surplus gear? You think you're in the Boy Scouts hall?" Laughter rippled through the room again. Marcus kept his eyes forward, jaw clenched. He wanted to explain. Those boots had belonged to his father, a man who wore them through a deployment Marcus barely remembered. But explaining meant weakness, so he said nothing. He just tightened the laces, even though they already cut into his ankles. At chow the next day, the ridicule didn't stop. One recruit bumped into Marcus on purpose, spilling mashed potatoes down his uniform. "Careful, Hall. Don't want you slipping. You'd probably file a complaint and cry home to Mama." More laughter. Marcus wiped the mess off with a napkin, sat down alone at the end of the table, and kept eating. His stomach turned, but not from the food. Across the hall, Corporal Diaz watched the scene unfold. Diaz didn't laugh. He didn't help either. But his eyes lingered on Marcus, a flicker of something like guilt in them. That was enough to remind Marcus that not everyone bought into the cruelty. Still, silence from an ally could sting as much as the insult itself. Drills were worse. Miller made Marcus do push-ups in the mud while others practiced rifle drills. "We don't need slow hands near live weapons," Miller barked. The recruits chuckled, lining up for marksmanship training while Marcus pushed through mud and shame. Sweat and dirt blurred together on his face. His arms trembled, but he refused to stop. 10 more. 15. 30. His chest hit the ground like a hammer, but he never asked for relief. Every push-up was a silent promise to himself. "I'll outlast this. I'll show them, even if it kills me." That night, Marcus pulled a small notebook from under his pillow. The pages were filled with sketches, maps, terrain layouts, tactical equations. He wrote in the quiet while the others slept. He planned routes, noted choke points, calculated distances. It was a strange kind of comfort, like training his mind while his body recovered. He kept it hidden, careful never to let Miller see. If they mocked him for old boots, what would they do if they knew he was studying strategy at night? He closed the notebook and slipped it away, but the fire in his chest stayed alive. Days blurred together. Ridicule, silence, endurance. Some nights Marcus thought about quitting, packing up, leaving, never having to hear Miller's voice again. But every morning, when the bugle blasted and boots thundered against the earth, something in him refused to give in. He didn't join to be liked. He joined to serve. And if service meant swallowing every insult and standing tall, then that's exactly what he'd do. Still, there were moments he felt the weight pressing too heavy, like when Miller barked, "Hall, you'll never make it past week 4. Mark my words." The unit laughed, a cruel chorus that echoed long after lights out. Marcus lay in his bunk, staring at the ceiling, fists clenched beneath the blanket. He thought of his father's boots again, of the promise he'd whispered when he first put them on. "I'll finish what you started, Dad." That thought kept him from breaking. And then something happened. Small, almost invisible, but enough to stir the air. During evening formation, as Miller berated Marcus yet again, Diaz shifted in line. Just a glance, but his eyes said it all. "Hold steady. This isn't the end." Marcus caught it, tucked it away like a lifeline. For the first time in weeks, he didn't feel completely alone. What Marcus didn't know was that the cracks in Miller's confidence were already forming. The day would come, sooner than anyone expected, when silence would no longer be possible, and the truth about Marcus Hall would rip through that barracks like a shockwave. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. Rain came down in sheets that morning, soaking through every stitch of the uniform until skin felt raw. Most of the recruits grumbled, muttered curses under their breath, dragging their boots through puddles like the weight of the world had tied itself to their ankles. Marcus didn't say a word. Sergeant Miller barked out another lap around the field, and every groan from the platoon felt louder than thunder. But Marcus leaned forward, drove his legs harder, each step pounding against mud, as if he had something personal to prove. By the third lap, others slowed. Some even slipped. Marcus kept going, shoulders hunched, lungs burning, his body one long scream of defiance that he never allowed to escape his lips. "Look at him," Miller shouted, pointing at Marcus. "Thinks he's Rambo. Hall, you're not tough. You're desperate. There's a difference." Laughter rang out behind him, bitter, sharp, but Marcus didn't give them the satisfaction of turning his head. He stared at the ground in front of him, one boot after the other, rain mixing with sweat until he couldn't tell what was what. When the whistle blew, most recruits collapsed on the field, gasping. Marcus stood tall, chest heaving, but his eyes steady. He'd taken everything they threw at him and asked for more. Later in the day came weapons training. The recruits gathered in the armory, rifles laid out on tables like sacred relics. Miller smirked, motioning Marcus forward. "Let's see what Hall's worth. Bet he can't even put a firing pin in the right place." Marcus reached for the parts, his fingers trembling slightly. He had studied every diagram in the manual, but the pressure of 20 eyes on him made his hands clumsy. A piece slipped, clattered to the floor, and laughter erupted like gunfire. "Careful, Hall. Don't shoot yourself putting it back together." Tyler, another recruit, jeered. Miller folded his arms, satisfied. Marcus kept his head down, picked up the piece, and reassembled slowly, methodically. It wasn't fast, it wasn't clean, but it worked. The rifle locked into place. Miller still sneered. "Barely, pathetic. Do it again." The cycle repeated, humiliation stacked on humiliation, until Marcus felt the sting in his stomach worse than hunger. That night, when the barracks lights dimmed and snores filled the air, Marcus stayed up, hands working in the dark. Over and over, assembling and disassembling, until his fingers moved with a memory stronger than thought. By dawn, he could do it blindfolded. Chow Hall was no kinder. The long line shuffled forward, trays clattering, the smell of overcooked eggs and stale coffee heavy in the air. Marcus balanced his tray, waiting for a seat, when Tyler stepped in front of him, smirking. With a sudden bump, the tray tilted, food sliding down Marcus's uniform. The hall roared with laughter. "Oops," Tyler said, fake innocence dripping from his voice. Marcus froze. He wanted to throw the tray back, to shout, to finally let them know how much it burned. Instead, he set the tray down, grabbed a napkin, and wiped the mess from his shirt. He walked to the far corner, sat alone, and ate what little was left. Across the room, Diaz watched again, not laughing, not moving, just watching. And when Marcus glanced up, Diaz gave the smallest nod, so quick it could have been imagined. But Marcus felt it. Someone saw him. Someone noticed. The weeks wore on. The obstacle course became the battlefield where Marcus silently carved out his own war. He lagged behind at first, arms shaking on the rope climb, legs slipping on the wall. Every failure earned jeers. "Hall, you're dragging us down. Go back to the motor pool." Miller never missed a chance to add fuel, but Marcus studied the course after hours, tracing every plank, measuring every gap with his eyes. He didn't complain. He just showed up earlier, stayed later, pushed harder. Rain, mud, blistered hands, it didn't matter. Every scrape was a scar earned in silence, and slowly, quietly, his times improved. No applause followed, just fewer jeers. The silence was louder than praise. Then came the march. 10 miles under heavy packs, boots cutting into flesh. The platoon started strong, cadence echoing across the trail. But by mile 7, shoulders sagged, and grumbling filled the ranks. Marcus's back screamed, but he stayed steady, one boot hitting dirt after the other. Tyler began limping, pack sliding sideways. No one offered help. Marcus slowed just enough to shoulder part of Tyler's load without a word. Tyler looked at him, confusion flickering across his face, but said nothing. Marcus just nodded forward, eyes fixed on the horizon. When they reached camp, Tyler dropped to the ground, breathing hard. He didn't thank him, but he didn't jeer that night either. There was one evening drill when it all nearly snapped. Miller singled Marcus out again. Hall, front and center. Marcus stepped forward, sweat dripping down his brow. Tell me, why are you here? You think you belong with soldiers? Look at you. The silence was suffocating. Marcus clenched his fists, words trapped in his throat. Before he could answer, Diaz spoke up from the ranks, voice low but clear. He's still standing, Sergeant. Not everyone is. The yard went dead quiet. Miller's eyes narrowed. He dismissed Diaz with a glare. But the crack was there. For the first time, someone had broken the wall of silence. Marcus felt it like a surge of electricity through his chest. He wasn't completely alone. That night, lying in his bunk, Marcus opened his notebook again. He sketched the obstacle course wall, marked out angles, figured leverage points. His pen scratched like a weapon against paper. Every line was a promise. One day soon, he wouldn't just keep up. He'd lead. He could feel it. The laughter, the mud, the weight, it was all sharpening him. And though no one else saw it yet, the day was coming when he'd silence every voice that mocked him. The climax came faster than anyone expected. During a late-night surprise drill, the squad was ordered to run the obstacle course blindfolded, guided only by shouted commands. Chaos erupted. Men tripped, collided, curses flew through the night. Marcus listened, heart pounding, hearing every command, every stumble, every wrong step. Something inside him snapped into place. He shouted the correct cadence, guiding those ahead of him with precision. Left! Higher grip! Push now! One by one, recruits adjusted, moving smoother, faster. Miller stopped barking, stunned as the squad started flowing together under Marcus's voice. By the time they hit the final wall, Marcus's commands carried them over. The squad finished as one unit, faster than they ever had before. Silence fell over the field. No one laughed, no one jeered. They just stared, and Miller, for once, said nothing. Back in the barracks, sweat still dripping, Marcus sat on his bunk in silence. Diaz passed by, clapped him lightly on the shoulder. Told you, you're still standing. Marcus didn't smile, didn't boast. He just opened his notebook and wrote one line beneath the sketches. Not the end, just the beginning. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The night air was thick with humidity, the kind that stuck to your lungs and made every breath feel heavier than it should. The recruits stood in formation under dim floodlights, packs strapped tight, rifles slung. Sergeant Miller's voice tore through the silence. Tonight you're running the night navigation drill. No maps, no light, just you, your squad, and the dark. Let's see who's soldier enough to find the rally point. His eyes lingered on Marcus like a vulture circling prey. Hall, don't slow them down, or maybe just stay behind and sweep up the footprints. The laughter that followed was predictable, sharp, and cruel. Marcus didn't answer. He just adjusted his pack straps and stared at the tree line where shadows swallowed the trail. Something about the night felt different, like all the weeks of humiliation had been sharpening him for this. They set off in silence, boots crunching over gravel and dirt, the beam of the moon smothered by heavy clouds. The first mile went smooth. Recruits stuck close, following Miller's shouted cadence. But then the terrain shifted, thick brush cutting across the path. Markers barely visible. A radio crackled, then went dead. Miller cursed under his breath. Keep moving, east, stay tight. But east led them into a swampy stretch. Water sucked at their boots and panic spread as the formation broke down. Shouts echoed, confusion, complaints, curses. In the chaos, someone slipped. A splash. Help! It was Tyler. He'd slid into a muddy ravine, pack dragging him deeper. Miller barked, "Leave him! Keep moving!" But Marcus didn't hesitate. He dropped his rifle to the side, belly crawled down, boots sinking into muck. Tyler thrashed, eyes wide with fear. Marcus grabbed the straps, planted his feet, and hauled with every ounce of strength he had. The weight nearly took them both under, but with one final heave, Tyler landed on solid ground. Mud streaked across both of them. Tyler gasped for breath, stunned. For once, he had nothing to say. By the time Marcus caught up, the squad was scattered. Some argued about direction. Others tried to guess from memory. Miller cursed again, his commands snapping left and right, but none of it made sense. That's when Marcus spoke. "West by northwest," he said quietly. Heads turned. Miller glared. "Shut your mouth, Hall." But Marcus didn't. He pointed to the ridge. "You can feel the incline. This slope runs toward the creek. Creek bends west. The rally point's beyond the ridge." The recruits looked between Marcus and Miller, caught in the tension. Miller's face twisted. "You think you're in charge? You think we take orders from a janitor in a uniform?" Marcus didn't flinch. "You can keep wandering in circles, or you can follow me. Your choice." His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. There was steel in it now, the kind that comes from carrying weight alone for too long. Silence followed, broken only by Diaz's voice. "He's right. The incline runs west." That single backing tipped the balance. One by one, recruits adjusted their packs and lined behind Marcus. For the first time, Miller had no control. The squad moved under Marcus's guidance. He called out quiet instructions. "Shift left, stay low under those branches. Step on the rocks, not the mud." The trail began to smooth out. The chaos dissolved into rhythm. Even Tyler, still breathing hard from the rescue, followed without a word. Marcus led them across the creek, through narrow brush, and up the ridge. And just as his calculations predicted, the glow of the rally point marker flared in the distance. Relief swept the group. Some whispered disbelief. Miller stomped ahead, face red, but the silence around him was heavier than any insult. At the rally point, a figure stepped out of the shadows. Not another drill instructor. Not a captain. A brigadier general. His presence alone froze everyone in place. "Who led you in?" he asked. No one spoke. Miller straightened, ready to claim credit, but Diaz cut in, voice steady. "Private Hall, sir." The general's eyes locked on Marcus. He stepped forward. "Private Marcus Hall?" Marcus snapped to attention, mud still clinging to his uniform. "Yes, sir." The general studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I knew your father. Sergeant First Class Daniel Hall. Best combat engineer I ever served with. Saved my platoon when our convoy got hit outside Kandahar. Sacrificed everything to hold the line." Gas rippled through the recruits. Marcus's throat tightened. He hadn't expected anyone here to even know his father's name, much less speak it with reverence. The general placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Looks like his son carries the same fire." The silence that followed was absolute. Miller's face drained of color. The same man he'd called maintenance stock stood recognized by a general, tied to a legacy of honor and sacrifice. Tyler avoided Marcus's eyes, shame painted across his features. For weeks, Marcus had been their target. Tonight, he had been their lifeline. The power had shifted so completely, it left everyone stunned. Even Marcus stood there, stunned, but steadier than ever. The general turned to the rest. "Let this be a lesson. Soldiers aren't measured by how loud they shout or how hard they mock. They're measured in silence, in storms, when the only thing holding the unit together is one soldier's refusal to quit." His words cut deeper than any punishment. He looked back at Marcus. "You have the makings of a leader. Don't waste it." With that, he dismissed the group. The recruits filed out quietly. No laughter this time, no jeers, just silence. Heavy, humbling silence. Back in the barracks, the atmosphere had changed. Tyler sat on his bunk, staring at the floor. He muttered almost to himself, "You didn't have to pull me out." Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. Diaz gave him another quiet nod, and this time stronger, clearer. Miller walked past without a word, his usual bark stolen, His authority cracked. Marcus sat on his cot, pulled out his notebook, and opened to a clean page. His hands shook slightly, not from fear but from something else. Acceptance. He wrote only one sentence. Tonight they saw me. Then he closed the book, leaned back, and for the first time in weeks, allowed himself to breathe without weight pressing down. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The morning after the night navigation drill, the air around the barracks felt different. It wasn't spoken out loud, but everyone felt it. The mocking laughter that usually followed Marcus into formation was gone, replaced by an uneasy silence. Soldiers avoided his eyes, some stealing glances, but quickly looking away. Even Tyler, who once never missed a chance to take a shot at him, kept his mouth shut. It was as if the entire platoon realized they had crossed a line, and the weight of what had happened under the stars still hung over them like smoke after a fire. But Sergeant Miller didn't let it go that easily. His pride had taken a direct hit, and everyone knew it. During drills, he paced behind Marcus, searching for cracks, for something to prove the night before was a fluke. Hall, you think one lucky night makes you a soldier? Think again. One night doesn't erase being weak the rest of the time. His words were sharp, but the sting wasn't the same anymore. The squad didn't laugh this time. They just kept their eyes forward. Miller's voice sounded like a man trying to convince himself as much as his platoon. Later in the chow hall, the shift became impossible to ignore. Marcus carried his tray, ready for the usual shove or spill, but it never came. Tyler was at the table with his usual crowd, but when Marcus walked by, he stopped mid-sentence. Tray halfway to his mouth. Their eyes met for a split second. Tyler looked away first. Marcus sat down, ate in peace, and for the first time since arriving, no one disturbed him. Across the room, Diaz caught his eye and gave him the same small nod as before. Except this time, it wasn't pity. It was respect.